friends, it's Christy. Welcome to day 4 of my 2019 Valentine Card Series. Today I'm using Lawn Fawn's Let's Toast, and I also have an egg from Extra Special Easter. I'm stamping these out in Memento Tuxedo Black ink on some Copic friendly cardstock, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers today. So to begin, I'm going to color the toaster, and for that I'm using C0, C1, and C3 so that I can get a traditional stainless steel look. I'm starting with the C3 and laying in some shadow on the outside edges. I want the lightest area to be on the face, so that's really prominent, so I'm going to shade from the outside in. I'm going to do the same on the top part of the toaster. Then I'm going to bring in C1 and pull a little bit of that darker color towards the middle. And I am going to have to move my paper so that I can flick in the color from the side comfortably. So hopefully you guys can remember what colors I'm using, but right now it's that C1. And then I'm going to bring in the C0 and again just pull a little bit of that darker color towards the center and really soften that up on the face. For the feet on the bottom and then the little tab and dial on the side, I'm going to use C5 and C7. I'm using the C7 first. On the bottom parts, I'm going to do the same as I did for the lighter areas. I'm just going to pull in from the outer edges with the darker color. And then with the knobs and dial on the side, I'm going to shade from the bottom up. So I used that C7 first, and now I'm using that C5 to just fill in the rest. And I decided that I needed one shade more for the middle section there on that border, so I just grabbed the C3 to finish that up. One of the things that I love to eat for breakfast is a nice soft-boiled egg, so I thought I would add in 2 of those just to make it a little bit more of a nutritious breakfast than just the toaster pastry. So I decided to do brown eggs only to add a little bit of color to the card. So I'm using E50, E51, and E53. And I'm shading with the darkest in the bottom left and shading towards the top right with the lightest shades. So I used the E53 at the bottom, then E51, and finished with the E50. While I have these markers out, I'm also going to use them to color in the edge of the toaster pastry. So I'm adding a little bit more of a toasted look with that E53 to the top left and bottom right corners. And then I'm shading out with the E51, and then I'll finish in the remaining corners with the E50. So I'll just give it like a nice kind of uneven toasted look. To give the frosting a little bit of color, I'm using RV00 and RV02. I thought this could be maybe a strawberry or a cherry flavored frosting, but I wanted it to be real subtle. I didn't want it to be like a bright pink. So I'm sticking really close to the edges with that RV02 and then bringing that out with the RV00, and then I'm going to pull in my colorless blender and soften that into the white areas. I wanted to add some sprinkles to the toaster pastry and also some blush to the toaster. So I'm using ballet slippers for that. And then I'm also going to grab in that little sprinkle image and just add a couple of those in with the ballet slippers ink. Then I'll clean that off, and next I'm going to use the butter ink just for a real pale yellow. And the reason I'm choosing these 3 particular colors of ink is so that it matches the pattern paper that I'm going to be using later. And then the last shade that I'm going to add in is Moonstone. And I stamped everything off on the white first just to see how I liked it. I thought maybe I would do a second generation stamping, but it wasn't dark enough, so I just went in full strength with that Moonstone. And then once I had all those in, I had a little bit of spot left that needed something, so I added another of the ballet slippers little trio of sprinkles. Now I'll just trim these out with the matching dies. For my focal panel, I've trimmed down some Watercolor Wishes pattern paper and also a piece of cheap thin white cardstock. And I'm going to glue these together so that I have a little more stability. And these were trimmed with one of the outside-in stitch rectangle stackables. Then I'm going to grab the tab die that comes with the pull tab add-on for the Let's Toast stamp set. And I'm going to trim out the notch from the top that's going to allow for our pull tab mechanism. To add a little tablecloth down at the bottom, I've trimmed down another piece of white cardstock with the stitched scallop borders, and that is going to go right under my toaster. So I'm just using these to kind of line up my tab that I need. And I actually made a mistake here and put this a little bit too high on the panel, but this was the very first time that I was using these dies, and I just went ahead and fixed it because I didn't want to start over. So I'll tell you how I fixed that in a little bit. Super simple, but for now I'm going to take this little mechanism and I'm going to fold in the tabs on the score lines and then grab my little Teflon bone folder and, really crease those really good. Then I can fold those together and insert them into the slot and open those back up again. I'm going to add some score tape to those two flaps just because I want to make sure that my toaster pastry is very secure since it's going to be moving up and down quite a bit. Whoever receives this card, I'm sure, is going to want to play with it, so I want to make sure that it's not going to fall off. And then I'll just hold those down with my fingers and add the toaster pastry right over top. And then you can see how that works. Now here is where I realized that I die cut that notch out much too high. I did it from the top of my toaster so the toaster pastry wouldn't go down inside the toaster. So all I did was re-die cut that notch a little bit lower, just line that up, and then filled in the gap with the piece of Watercolor Wishes paper that came from the die. And so that's going to prevent it from going up too high, and it also looks a little more seamless without having to start completely over. So on that little piece of tablecloth, I'm stamping Poppin' Up to Say with Moonstone ink. And then I'm also going to stamp on the inside of my card while I have my Misty out. For that, I'm using the bubblegum ink, and I'm using the piece of toast and the stamp that says Happy Heart Day. And then I filled in the toast with some heart-shaped jam. I'm going to add that piece of tablecloth down at the bottom with some liquid glue and make sure that my toaster pastry is just slid up completely out of the way so that it doesn't get caught up on that. And then I will grab my toaster. I've added a thin piece of foam tape to the outside edges, and then I'm going to fit the toaster pastry up through the slot and then press that down into place. Just line that up nice and straight so that the toaster pastry will go up and down easily, and then press that down. I have my toaster pastry where I want it. I'm going to trim off the extra of the pull tab mechanism, and then I'll take this little tab with a little triangle die cut out of it, and I'm going to add some liquid glue to that. I'm going to be really sparing on the front part so that it doesn't ooze out through that triangle, and then just add that right into place so it has a really seamless look. And I'll set that focal panel aside and work on my card base. I'm taking some perfectly plaid spring pattern paper, and I trimmed that out using these scalloped rectangle stackables. I glued that down to the whole front of the card, and now I'm taking a tiny heart stamp and stamping that in the bubblegum ink once again to add just 5 little hearts to add to the Valentine look of this card. Speaking of Valentine's Day, I did want to mention that the Cards for Little Hearts drive that I had been creating cards for, I actually misinterpreted their call for heart theme cards. They're actually not accepting Valentine cards, which I was not made aware of until very recently. So unfortunately, I won't be able to send any of these cards in. So I'm going to just save my cards for the cards from the heart drive that I usually participate in. That should be back next year. If you have already created cards and you don't want to save them for next year, you may check with your local children's hospital or a nursing home and see if you can hand out your cards there. So that completes day 4 of my 2019 Valentine Card Series. I'm actually going to stop right there with this series since there was the mix-up with the card drive, and I'll be back with regular cards coming very soon. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you need more Valentine inspiration, here are videos from day 4 of my previous 2 years of Valentine Card Series. I have playlists for all of my card series, so you can check those out. Thanks so much again for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.